We have in the audience a special person who's worked very hard, who married very well. It's my daughter, Ivanka. Where is she? I sort of stole her husband. He is so great. If you can't produce peace in the Middle East, nobody can. Okay? All my life, I've been hearing that's the toughest deal in the world to make. And I've seen it. But I have a feeling that Jared is going to do a great job.
That was Donald Trump praising his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, the night before he was sworn in as president. I feel like I've aged 100 years since then, but Kushner, now a White House senior advisor, is playing a key role in many of his father-in-law's initiatives, including Middle East peace efforts and heading the White House Office of American Innovation. Before heading to the White House, he ran his family's real estate company. And a new article published in the New York Times Magazine gives us an inside look at how that company deals with people who live or used to live in some of its apartment complexes. Joining the panel now is Alec McGillis, the reporter for ProPublica, who wrote the piece for the New York Times Magazine, and MSNBC contributor Jason Johnson, politics editor for TheRoot.com. Thank you both for joining our motley crew today. So the piece is stunning to me, but I've never worked in real estate, and I wonder if you could, give us some of the top lines, but then also answer for me whether this is standard in the industry or whether these practices were more vicious than what is standard for the real estate industry.
So what I found was that, we hear about Jared Kushner and his real estate holdings. We think of him as a big, fancy New York real estate guy with a big tower on Fifth Avenue. In fact, what he also has is this huge collection of downscale apartment complexes in Baltimore,
Maryland,
in Maryland, around the country, but the biggest concentration of them are right in Baltimore. 15 complexes, about 8,000 units. And what we found is that there is just an incredible pursuit of the tenants and former tenants of these complexes, where they go after them for any missing rent, any broken lease, even when it's not justified.
You write a wrenching story about a single mom, I think of three, who worked as a home health care attendant and ended up owing them a few $1,000s, and they pursued her and ultimately garnished her wages.
Exactly. And in that case, it was completely unjustified. She had gotten permission.
Why? Why was it unjustified?
It was unjustified because she had gotten written permission to move out of her unit. There was a neighbor who was acting crazy next door, screaming at her kids and
waking
all that.
up the baby.
Waking up the baby.
Every mother's nightmare.
Yeah, exactly. She got permission to move out of that place, written permission, then moved out. 2 years later, the Kushner company, which had bought this complex, comes after her. She wasn't even living there for $5,000, exactly.
Now, why do they spend more? It has to cost them more in legal fees to pursue these people who are, in a lot of cases, working class or economically downscale. What is sort of the driving principle of it, and is it outside the mainstream of the real estate industry?
Not if you've got lawyers on staff. Right. If you have a huge legal team already on staff, if this is done as a template, all you have to do as a form letter is repeatedly send it out, and go after these people. For an individual, that's when they have to go out and get themselves representation. If you're a company, I mean, when you say, how could President Trump have been involved himself in 4,000 lawsuits? When you've got lawyers that you're paying no matter what, you can have all the lawsuits you want.
And here's one of the other things. Baltimore is actually the first city in America to have rent courts, like they introduced them 70 years ago to prevent this kind of nonsense. You don't even have to have a lawyer. You can just send a real estate agent to actually represent your company. Now, regular people don't know that. Single moms don't know that, who are working 2 or 3 different jobs. So it is a huge burden on regular people. It costs nothing to folks like Jared Kushner.
Joel, do you see this becoming a political vulnerability for the president, or is it too far removed? Is there enough there?
I think as good as the story is, and I think it's an interesting story, I think it is a little too far removed, and it's also not going to rise to the level of everything else that we're dealing with in Washington. He's going to come back from an overseas trip. You know, he's got NATO meetings the next 2 days, which I think
anything could happen. Let's face it.
with the environment now, right? It's going to be a very interesting set of meetings with our allies. He's going to come back, and we're going to be thrust back into more Russia stuff, a budget plan that's going to be disastrous for a lot of Republicans and the states and districts they represent. So while the story certainly does pique some curiosity and interest about why somebody would do this, I don't think it's going to have long legs politically.
But it speaks to the ethos. You worked with the Bush family. Can you imagine the Bush family conducting their private business like this? And when you add up story after story like this, you know, when Ivanka Trump ran her brand and she had a woman who joined her who was pregnant, and that woman said, "What's your maternity leave policy?" And Ivanka said, "Well, I don't have one. I came back to work the day after I had my baby." Does that story mean, oh, she shouldn't be a senior advisor to the president? No. But when you start to add all of these up, then you say, Do these people truly understand the basic difference between right and wrong?
But Stephanie,
Can
we
I
thought that
put you on
during
the spot?
campaign.
Great point.
Can I
you
put you
piled
on
it
the
up.
spot, though, and ask you, based on the reporting, first answer how involved Jared is in the running of the company, and then what did it tell you about how he runs the company, and whether he knows the answer to Stephanie's question, the difference between right and wrong?
He was quite involved in this. And he prides himself on being a real estate guy. And he was very proud of making these purchases when they made them back in 2011 and 12. He spoke at length about them in a very sort of informed industry way about why he'd bought these complexes.
He called them a great asset.
Great asset and you know, great revenue stream. And he was the CEO of this company until, you know, just a few months ago when he stepped back to take on his new job. And this company was behaving differently than other companies that in this business. They were going after people. Remember that they bought these complexes and they were going after people who the previous owners had not gone after in court. And
look, I have to admit, and I sort of agree and disagree. I thought it was a brilliant story. As someone who drives through Baltimore, I have to drive through Baltimore every other day when I go to class. I see the devastation of this city. It's the same way that East Cleveland looks. It's the same way the parts of St. Louis look. This is an American nightmare. This is the devastation that Trump talked about, and yet his own son is involved in it. But hey, like father, like son, because Trump had the same problems back in the 80s. I don't think this is necessarily going to be a huge issue now. We've got Russia. We've got other things going on. But down the road, these things trickle down. Regular people remember...
Or bubble up.
Exactly, bubble up, exactly. Or don't work at all because the pipes don't work. These things eventually resonate with regular people when they say, wait a minute, these guys are taking advantage of us, and I don't see this new great America that I was promised.
Jared prides himself on being a big-time real estate guy. Big-time real estate guys do not participate in the EB-5 visa program. That's just a no.
All right, last word there from Stephanie Ruhle. Congratulations on your reporting. I know it's the second most popular story on the New York Times website. It's a high bar. Congratulations, and thank you so much for being here with us. When we come back, we've got some